Uncertainty rises after the short battle of Chuo. Uncertainty of where the next battle will take place. All throughout Japan, everyone is wondering where these two titans, Godzilla II and Ghidorah, are going to meet next. On the morning of July 22nd, however, Admiral Robert Field of the Hoboken battle carrier has made his final calculations. Tokyo is the likeliest city where the two will converge once again. With that information, Prime Minister Miyazawa orders a major evacuation for all districts of the city. Even districts outside of Tokyo, who are in the path of Godzilla heading southeast, are ordered to stay clear of his path. It is projected that the Titans will arrive in Tokyo in just 2 days, and that comes with problems. Evacuating over 32 million people from the entirety of Tokyo has become more of a daunting task than ever. From Adachi in the northeast to Ota in the south, most of the procedures are going as planned, but in some districts, like Shinagawa and Shinjuku, traffic jams are clogging the roads. The reason is that some decided to leave their vehicles, creating multiple problems for all. Another issue are the kaiju bunkers. The max capacity for the Japanese kaiju bunker is 200 to 500. Any more would be very difficult. Some civilians and families refuse to leave their homes and businesses because in their eyes, it has been their livelihood for many years and they do not want to go. But thankfully, there are some good news. Godzilla II has stopped and taken a temporary rest in Linkakawa, giving one more day for the JAMF and JSDF to make preparations and continue the evacuation. But with Godzilla taking a rest, however, came a real problem. Large numbers of civilians demanded to travel or be transported to the Chiba prefecture. The first option is by car, but the idea is not liked. The second option was through Tokyo Bay. The second is chosen. On July 22nd, large numbers of boat owners volunteered to drive their own personal vessels that can hold up to 30 people to bring a quarter of Tokyo's population across the bay to Chiba. But with this decision to cross the bay, however, came a major drawback. Ghidorah. At 10 o'clock a.m., Ghidorah begins his attack on the boats and 125 people are immediately killed. The Maritime Self-Defense Force and the AMF are providing escort and suppressive defense for the vessels as they continue to cross, but the efforts of holding back the three-headed alien are minimal. Despite the danger that is hanging over their heads, the people who chose to go through Tokyo Bay continues to do so. A journalist from the BBC, Darren Miller, reported this to the world. Tokyo Bay has become the Dunkirk evacuation, and Ghidorah is the equivalent of the infamous Stuka dive bomber. By midnight, out of 180,000 who decided to cross the bay, only 1,500 made it across. The phrase, escape through Tokyo Bay, is starting to become what it is being called as. At 2:30 a.m., multiple civilians and AMF officers rushes to Shijiro Honda to help them, but to their disappointment, he tells them that he has not been Dragonborn for 2 years. But he does offer a different solution, Miki Sagusa, of which she is completely taken aback by the fact that she was asked to defend the civilians in Tokyo Bay. Rightfully so, she rushes to her master trying to talk him out of what he is thinking. But Honda shoots right back. You denying the chance to defend as many people as possible is basically telling them that they are being sentenced to the bottom of Tokyo Bay, with Ghidorah being the executioner. Words like that shook Sagusa to her very core. He tells her to remember what she learned for 2 years, and the one thing that she was taught to do. At 11:05 a.m., Sagusa stands on a JMSDF destroyer Amagiri, and then it came. As Ghidorah fires its gravity beams at the bay, she uses her telekinesis to block the bolts from any of the boats or ships. Her first attempt is a struggle, but with each bolt, she learns how to control them, block them, reflect them, and even redirect some of them back at Ghidorah. Amagiri, as well as the destroyers Asagiri, Sentogiri, and Samagiri, provides fire support as she continues to perform her duty. By 12:25 p.m., Ghidorah retreats to the mountains in the distance. 289,688 civilians made it across, with only 50 losing their lives. As she steps back onto land, she is overwhelmed with praise, with many calling her the heroine of Tokyo Bay. But an American reporter in Chiba, Mike Skinner, reports this to CNN. In all of my years living in both the US and Japan, that young Esper is the greatest form of bravery that I have ever seen. After this event, you might as well call her the Telekinetic Empress. Sagusa herself hears of the nickname, and shockingly, she happily decides to use it and keep it. It also gives the idea to the United Nations to refer to MUCON as such going forward, and to finally allow countries that give said MUCON the option to enlist into the Anti-Megalosaurus Force. But that is a potential future. As the escape through Tokyo Bay was happening, the JSDF's 1st Division of the Eastern Army have been sending up 6 M270 missile artillery trucks and Type 81s in 6 different sectors. Because the division has no armor, the 9th Tank Battalion of the Northeastern Army and the 10th Tank Battalion of the Central Army are providing Type 74s for them. Not just that, but the 2nd Division's 2nd Tank Regiment, the 7th Division's 71st and 72nd Tank Regiments from the Northern Army are providing Type 90s for them as well for both the JSDF and JAMF. 15 AH-1 Cobras are in position throughout Tokyo. The 1st Infantry Regiment and the AMS 18 Infantry Battalion has been gifted heavy weapons such as M72 Laws, Howa 84 recoilless rifles, Nissan 110mm and Type 87 anti-tank launchers and missiles, as well as FIM-92 Stingers. At sea, the Yokosuka District has deployed 18 destroyers with the United States 5th Carrier Strike Group led by the supercarrier USS Independence, providing the Japanese with support. In the air, Yokosuka Air Base provides the 5th Air Force with the AMS 14th, 82nd, 105th, and 48th Tactical Fighter Squadrons stationed in Haneda. The preparations are complete, the world is watching live, and the battle for the future shall finally begin. A building collapses to the ground, creating, flinging, and throwing up dust and debris high up into the air. A foot steps through, followed by another. Godzilla II walks into the Shinjuku National Park with clear intentions on his mind. He stops and takes a look at the Metropolitan Building. Looking at these towering skyscrapers, he starts to remember the last time he has been in this area. This very same area, in fact, is where he had fought the hovering aircraft, the Super X, back in 1984. He even looks to the very skyscraper where he collapsed on. His eyes rest up behind him and sees the Home of the Dawn hovering close to him. The battle carrier has not left him since Nagata. Not a single cannon was fired at him throughout the trip. A jolt of energy hits the king's mind. Alarms blares throughout the dawn, and its 20-inch cannons and AA guns aims in a single direction. His tail lifts and slams on the ground. Godzilla snarls as his upper lip lifts. He turns his head right and looks behind him with one eye. Ghidorah slowly descends to the ground, snarling at the Titan as he turns his body to face his enemy. As the beast lands, the two exchange glares at one another. In their eyes, they speak their own stories. One wants to kill the intruder to ensure the safety of his territory, while the other wants to eliminate all life, including its current foe. Parts of Godzilla's dorsal fins flickers blue before all of them flickers at once. The undersides of Ghidorah's neck glows yellow. Both takes in deep breaths, and then the atomic breath is fired and a wave of gravity beams is fired at the same time. Both attacks do not connect, but connects to the opposing Titan, with the bolts hitting Godzilla's sides and the atomic breath hitting Ghidorah's stomach. Both of these attacks pushes them meter by meter, but both refuses to fall. They apply more energy, resulting in two great explosions, causing them to stop. Ghidorah falls to its stomach, while Godzilla is launched into the Metropolitan Building. The explosions create shockwaves that are felt by General Shindo and his staff in the command center far below ground. The smoke clears and Godzilla pulls himself out of the massive tower. He shakes his head and looks towards his enemy, but it is gone. He looks around to find it, with no luck. He looks towards the dawn and the guns are moving, following something. He turns to the left and gets hit in the face with a bolt. Another bolt hits him on the side. Then another hits one dorsal fin, causing it to flash gold for a split second, and is immediately greeted by Ghidorah's right foot to his face. Its talons scratches and claws like a hawk. Godzilla reaches up with his hands, but the winged beast moves out of the way. Ghidorah fires a wave of bolts at its staggering enemy, but he refuses to go down. The middle head stops firing and looks up at the Metropolitan Building. An idea comes to it. It fires bolts at the side, cutting across from one side to another. It stops as well as the other heads and jumps away. One half of the skyscraper falls over and collapses onto Godzilla, burying him alive. The winged beast walks closer and clears the dust. The heads gets closer to the massive pile. Suddenly, an atomic breath blasts out of the rubble, hitting Ghidorah in the stomach, sending it back 200 meters away. The attack stops, and the alien crashes into trees and multiple buildings. Godzilla emerges from the rubble, stands and shakes his body and turns to his downed enemy. Ghidorah lifts its wings and slams them onto the ground with furious intent. Ghidorah angrily roars at its enemy, of which Godzilla II responds with a furious roar of his own. Then, the two runs towards each other. Finally, the two clashes, with Godzilla grabbing onto the left and right necks and the heads themselves grabbing onto him, creating a massive shockwave, shattering windows and toppling over cars and trucks for 2 miles across. The Titans pushes each other like sumo wrestlers, using every ounce of strength to gain the upper hand and make the other fall. Godzilla grabs hold of Ghidorah's neck and swings it around and pushes it back. The three-headed beast digs his feet into the ground to stop, but to no avail. He pushes it off and swings his open hand, slapping the three heads at once. He turns around, swinging his tail. The space dragon sees it and jumps up into the air. It lands just as Godzilla swings his open left hand. The right head grabs his hand with its teeth. The middle grabs the side of his neck, and the left grabs his left shoulder. It spreads its wings and lifts up into the air, bringing him with it. Godzilla cries in pain as his body slams onto the ground and is dragged across the national park. Ghidorah lifts him up and fires gravity beams, launching the kaiju through the remaining half of the Metropolitan Building. Crashing through, he fires an atomic breath, but misses when Ghidorah flies up into the air. He collapses on the ground as the building crumbles. He turns over and shakes his body. He gets back to his feet, only for Ghidorah to curb stomp his head with his left foot. He gets up and misses biting it. The alien's tail wraps around his neck. Godzilla tries to break free as he is being pulled on his feet. Ghidorah goes up, unwraps his tails, and the Kaiju King crashes through the Kaitsu Plaza Hotel. He falls on the other side on his stomach. As he quickly gets back up, he realizes something. He must keep the alien on the ground long enough to deliver strikes, but the Titan is flying too fast in the air. Several ideas are running through his mind, but none will seem to work. Suddenly, he gets one idea. He looks around himself. Skyscrapers that tower over himself and Ghidorah. This idea can work. He watches the beast as it gains more speed and gets ready to catch him with its talons. He waits and waits and waits, and then he quickly moves out of the way. Ghidorah's own momentum causes it to slam against the damaged hotel. Godzilla turns and swings his tail, smacking the alien in the back, sending it through at full force. The entirety of the skyscraper collapses on the beast. Ghidorah bursts out of the rumble seconds later. He shakes his body in heads, then quickly turns around in a furious rage. The heads become shocked. Godzilla is gone. They look around. The beast lowers its body and begins searching for his foe. In the command center and in the dawn, both Admiral and General are impressed. Impressive. He's using the skyscrapers to hide himself so that he can jump Ghidorah from behind. He's more intelligent than we thought. Indeed, anytime Ghidorah seems to be getting closer, Godzilla silently moves away to a different spot. Godzilla's immense patience trumps over Ghidorah's lack of patience. Finally, he sees that he is behind a winged alien. He grabs and rips a piece of a skyscraper. He then carefully throws it. It hits the building beside Ghidorah, causing the right head to fire a bolt at it. The middle head angrily bunks it for not concentrating. Godzilla runs up behind and grabs into the Titan's tails. Ghidorah realizes, spreads its wings and lifts up. Suddenly, he fires an atomic breath at the left wing, piercing through, and the alien falls into its stomach. He drags his foe across the ground, lifts and swings it through multiple skyscrapers around them, and throws it into the island tower. As Ghidorah crashes through, Godzilla realizes that like any bird on Earth, once the wings are damaged or injured, it loses its ability to take flight. Shindo and Field are taking note of it as well, but there is not enough time to wonder how long until it heals. He must use this advantage now. Ghidorah emerges from the rubble and shakes his heads. The beast turns around, and immediately Godzilla strikes all three heads with a right punch, followed by a left and back to a right. All three heads reaches out to grab him, but he gets out of the way and grabs onto the necks. Getting a tight grip, he chokes all three at once. Godzilla lifts the body up, then slams it down, lifts it up again, and slams it back down. He turns and swings it into a skyscraper, then into another. He turns around, hoists the necks over his shoulder, lifts the entire Titan over his shoulder, and slams the beast through the Shinjuku Nomura building. The 209-meter tall tower collapses as Ghidorah falls on his back, burying it alive, but leaving the heads exposed. As the smoke and debris goes everywhere, the Titan struggles to break free of the massive pile of rubble. A massive foot comes through the smoke and stomps onto the middle head, choking it. The left and right head shoots bolts at him out of desperation, sending him back. The middle head coughs, then snarls. The head shoots at the pile, blowing it up, and finally breaking free. It rolls on its stomach and gets to its feet. It angrily charges at its enemy. Ghidorah headbutts him with his left and right heads. As it tries for another, Godzilla knocks away the right head with his left hand, but the left head bites down on him. In the same motion, he turns and swings his tail, smacking into Ghidorah's legs, causing it to lose balance. However, Ghidorah rebounds and jumps into Godzilla's back. It wraps its necks around him like multiple snakes and wraps its tails around his legs. Godzilla attempts to knock or shake the beast off of him, but it shocks him with gravity beams each time. He grabs the left and right heads and bites on the middle head. His dorsal fins glows bright blue. The heat burns through Ghidorah's scaly skin. Causing it to lose its grip. A burst of energy called an atomic pulse explodes from Godzilla's body in all directions. The force pushes Ghidorah off, and the winged kaiju crashes through 50-meter buildings onto its back. The kaiju king turns around and puffs blue smoke as he snarls, telling it to try a lot harder than that. General, the Titans are exiting Shinjuku, and they're heading for Minato. Inform the battalions to get ready. In the Hope of the Dawn, descend to 100 meters and turn main guns 90 degrees to port. The cannons on the forward bow of the battle carrier turns to port. 9:55 a.m. Godzilla aggressively pushes Ghidorah by its feet. It bites down on him and uses electric shocks from its teeth, causing him to let go. As the two separates, Godzilla fires an atomic breath. Ghidorah flies up into the air and dodges it. He fires another, following the alien as it evades the blast entirely. The atomic breath blows up anything that it touches. Buildings, vehicles, and even the streets are not spared as the blast digs through the ground. Unfortunately, it sweeps through one of the kaiju bunkers, vaporizing every occupant inside. Bunker 882 is destroyed! A knowledge that Shindo is going to live with. Godzilla stops firing, takes in a deep breath, and growls. Ghidorah lands and growls right back. The two titans roars and runs at each other once more. In the center of Minato, Ghidorah rams Godzilla into a building and he falls on his back. Ghidorah quickly plants his foot on his head, keeping him from getting back up. Their necks glows and they open their mouths. Suddenly, heavy explosions causes the beast to stop before firing gravity beams and lifts his foot from him. Godzilla lifts his head and witnesses his enemy getting bombarded by explosion after explosion. He looks to the right and sees the smoke coming out of the cannons of the Hope of the Dawn. Suddenly, the 20-inch rifles fires what they call kaiju-piercing shells directly at Ghidorah in a double salvo every 6 to 10 seconds. Autoloader? Interesting. The dual-mounted 76mm turrets on the port side starts firing high-explosive armor-piercing shells. The anti-air guns unleashes a hailstorm of bullets and explosive rounds. All of the projectiles hits every part of the alien. On the stern flight deck, 3 fighter jets launches off into the air. The jet circles back around and drops 3 2,000-pound bombs. The beast wraps itself with its wings, but the shells, bullets, and bombs pierces through and hits its body regardless. Angered, it rises and fires 2 bolts. They hit the Dawn's starboard amidships and aft. It prepares to fire more bolts when Godzilla rams into the alien at full speed. He grabs its legs, swings, and throws it at the side of Tokyo Tower. The tower timbers like a tree as Ghidorah falls backwards on it. As he puffs smoke from his nostrils, he spots 8 F-15Js of the AMS 82nd Fighter Squadron coming in fast past the clouds, dropping their 1,000 to 2,000-pound bombs. All of the bombs hits ground, but most lands on the alien. It retaliates with a wave of gravity beams, but it misses most of them and only hitting some. Artillery, open fire! The M270s and Type 81s fires missiles directly at the target in Minato. 30 seconds later, the projectiles hits their intended target. The 1st Infantry Regiment and the AMF's 18th Infantry Battalion fires off their anti-tank and aircraft rocket launchers, connecting to the 3-headed menace. Without giving it a rest, the AH-1 Cobras arrives and unleash wave upon wave of rockets and missiles at the shielding Ghidorah, of which it turns its attention to them. As Ghidorah gets to his feet, Godzilla grabs the middle head. The head grabs him and throws him against the building. It flies towards him, but he fires an atomic breath at its right wing, and the alien shrieks in pain. The 20-inch shells from the Dawn hits the left wing. The beast falls with a sickening thud. Godzilla gets behind, grabs hold of his tails, and slams the alien on the ground once, then twice. On the 3rd time, the Dawn's 20-inch guns hits Ghidorah while in midair, then Godzilla swings it 360 degrees before throwing it into several office buildings. He heals himself as the winged beast rises back to its feet. The Titans clashes into a brawl. 10:17 a.m. Godzilla falls on his side near the Shinagawa Station. Ghidorah opens his mouth, but gets interrupted by the 105 and 120mm cannons of the Type 74 and Type 90 tanks respectively. It turns back and fires 2 bolts, hitting and destroying 4 tanks. Godzilla turns his body and wraps his tails around Ghidorah's legs. He stands to his feet, moves forward, bringing the alien kaiju off of its feet, dragging it across the ground, then throws it away. Turning a full 360 degrees, he fires an atomic breath at the same time that the Dawn fires its cannons. The blast of projectiles crashes onto Ghidorah as it drives into a skyscraper. Seconds later, the beast erupts from the rubble in a furious rage. Staring at both Godzilla and the Dawn, it realizes that it is fighting a mere handicap. Despite that fact, it continues to fight regardless of the odds. The brawl exits out of southern Tokyo, leaving a trail of destruction from the towering skyscrapers on Shinjuku, to the collapse of Tokyo Tower, to the train station in Shinagawa, to the Haneda Airport that became a blazing inferno. All the while, the AMF, JSDF, and the American 5th Carrier Strike Group are providing the Kaiju King with aid that he did not expect. 11:01 a.m. Crossing the Tama River, Ghidorah drags Godzilla by his neck with his talons. The Titan crashes into the Yokosumacho energy power plant. As he rises, he fires an atomic breath at one of the silos in front of the alien, blowing it up and knocking it out of the sky. The Kaiju King rises up, grabs it by its tails, and lifts it over his shoulder back down into 7 silos, exploding on impact. Ghidorah rises and charges at its foe, only to be met with a right and left punch to his heads. The right head prevents another right by biting on the arm. Godzilla stops the left hand from biting on him by grabbing it and bites down the neck of the middle head. Ghidorah shrieks in pain. The right head desperately emits electric shock through its teeth, but he does not let go. All ships, concentrate fire on Ghidorah! All of the destroyers and American cruisers unleashes salvo shells and guided missiles, and they all hits the winged beast on the back. F-14 carrier fighters of the FV-21 Squadron of Carrier Wing 5 from the Carrier Independence arrives, dropping 3 2,000-pound bombs each. With each hit, however, it becomes more and more irritated and infuriated. The middle head spots 3 bombs falling towards it. It bites on Godzilla, pulls him, and uses him as a shield against the bombs. The Dawn's 20-inch cannons fires, and once again, Ghidorah uses the Titan's body to shield it against the shells. Godzilla shrieks in pain and lets go of the alien. Shaking its head, it looks at their surroundings. An idea comes to the beast. The space dragon charges up and fires a wave of gravity beams. They maneuver around the kaiju into multiple silos surrounding him. Each silo that the bolt touches explodes. Realizing what is going on, Godzilla rushes to get out of harm's way. Some of the bolts stops him in his tracks. As he falls to the ground, more and more silos filled with fuel and electricity blows up, creating a gargantuan explosion engulfing the Kaiju King entirely. Ghidorah cheerfully roars as the fireball rises up into the sky. Godzilla's roar cuts it off. Joy turns into shock. The 3 heads looks back at the wall of fire with worry and certainty. Godzilla, with rage in his eyes and his entire back and tail completely on fire, storms out and charges at the alien. Terrified and shocked, Ghidorah fires another wave of bolts, but the bolts do not slow down the flaming titan as they either do nothing or bounce off of his skin and hit several silos beside him. As it continues to fire, the determined Godzilla continues to run towards it. He grabs and pushes the winged beast off of its feet as an explosive chain reaction follows behind the two. As the Titan falls into Tokyo Bay, the entire energy plant explodes greater than the yield of any conventional bomb in history. The shockwave hits the JMSDM destroyers in the bay and the Dawn in the air, and the massive ball of fire can be seen as far as Chiba and Yokohama by civilians who evacuated to those cities and military personnel alike. In the command center, Shindo looks away from the screen. I feel like it's getting worse and worse. With the kaiju underwater, no one knows what is going on. Suddenly, bubbles of boiling foam moves towards the center of the bay. The waters explodes, wings emerges, and the 3 heads reaches out, with the alien roaring into the sky. The destroyers and the Home of the Dawn resumes fire, hitting its wings. With its wings damaged, it cannot escape from the water. As it struggles to stay above the water, the ship continues to fire upon it. Enraged, it turns its attention to them. Suddenly, like a great white shark, Godzilla bursts out of the water and grabs the beast's neck, dragging it back underwater. The heads burst out, struggling to get away, but he drags them back under. All ships, hold your fire. Let him take care of it. All guns, cease fire. All of the guns on the destroyers and the Dawn stops firing as ordered. Godzilla maneuvers around underwater with ease and agility much better than Ghidorah, which struggles with each attempt. He bites down on the middle neck and yanks on it. He fires his atomic breath, rolls its entire body like an alligator or crocodile, and rips the head off. He dissolves the head in its mouth, still engulfed in atomic flame. Ghidorah, fearing for its own life and completely out of options, fires a wave of gravity beams at the very same moment when Godzilla fires another atomic breath. The blast collides. Suddenly, in less than a second, a massive explosion erupts, knocking both titans away. Large amounts of water erupts up to 500 meters in the air, creating a tsunami in all directions. The rushing waters rocks all of the destroyers and American cruisers before hitting land. Seconds later, it all goes quiet. 5 seconds goes by. Suddenly, wings erupts from underneath the waves, and Ghidorah flies out of the water into the air. Captain? Yes, sir? Set a course for Oshima Island. Double time. Aye, aye. Set a course for Oshima Island. Flank speed. The hovering battle carrier turns to the south towards Oshima. Ghidorah lands near the blown-up energy plant. At the very moment the ship resumes fires upon the beast. It wraps its wings around it. Suddenly, all of the ship stops firing. All of their ammunition has been used. All of the crews looks back at Ghidorah as it wraps itself, showing that its middle head is regenerating back. As the middle head finishes regenerating, the three-headed beast stares at all of the destroyers and American cruisers. The middle head looks towards the dawn, heading away from the battle, then looks back. Ghidorah looks straight up and fires gravity beams high into the sky. The bolt stops at 300 meters and joins together. It grows into a massive electric ball. All of the sailors and crews looks on in horror. The Titan spreads its wings, stops firing, looks down, and sadistically smiles in unison. The beast slams its arms down. A great gravity storm of golden lightning shoots down from the massive ball. The bolts hits every destroyer, U.S. cruiser, and jet in its radius, increasing the number of casualties tremendously. The ball of bolts disappears, but Ghidorah continues its destruction by firing a continuous wave of bolts from its mouths. Then, the beast turns its attention to the dawn heading south. It spreads its wings and takes flight, pursuing the vessel. Captain! Ghidorah's pursuing us! All anti-air guns, open fire! The AA batteries unleashes a volley of fire at the approaching Titan. Unknown to the two as they are heading for Oshima Island, another is heading there as well. When the underwater explosion knocked both Titans away, Godzilla fell back into an undiscovered tunnel. He notices that it is leading somewhere, and rightfully guessing that Ghidorah will be heading away from Tokyo Bay, he swims down the tunnel to an unknown location. 11:05 a.m. Godzilla walks onto the shores of Oshima Island. He shakes the water from his hardened skin and looks around. He immediately recognizes this landscape, the very same island where its volcano was his prison for 6 long years. He looks off to the side and spots the 5th Carrier Strike Group 3 miles offshore. He also spots a large amount of JAMF presence throughout. He and the troops hears gunfire getting closer. He turns around and spots the home bunch of dawn with smoke pouring out from the starboard bow to port stern, continuously firing at Ghidorah. Godzilla looks away back at Mahara. An idea comes to his mind. Then, he wastes no more time and rushes towards the active volcano. 11:50 a.m. Ghidorah lands on the flight deck of the Home of the Dawn. The weight of the massive kaiju sways the battle carrier downwards, causing some of the sailors to slip and fall to their deaths. The guns continues to fire non-stop. The 3 heads bites down on the superstructure and conning tower. Damage has reached critical status! The engines begins to fail. Fires are breaking out. All of the machinery begins to fail. Come on, just a little further! Amelia, we need to get to the fort 20 against guns. Come on! Both the admiral and captain rushes out of the bridge down the corridors. Suddenly, something rocks the ship. Ghidorah is firing gravity beams down in the midships. It stops when a stream of fire erupts from where it was shooting. The beast jumps off and floats in the air. A colossal explosion erupts in and outside of the Home of the Dawn, twisting, shearing, and splitting the mighty battle carrier in half. Near Mount Mahara, Kenichiro Terasawa, Monimura, Sagusa, General Wilson, and all of the AMS 28th Engineer Battalion on Oshima watches in shock and horror. Godzilla stops halfway up the mountain and sees the 2 halves of the Dawn going down. 350 sailors and crew dies as the flight deck crashes and explodes on impact near the small town. The forward bow of the ship crash lands 50 meters away from Mahara itself, the exact same way that the ship appeared days ago. Terasawa and Monimura's instincts tells them that they need to check on their daughter and Robert Field, but they rethink it when Ghidorah lands near the torn bow and inspects to see if any human has survived. It finds no such humans. The 3 heads turns to the humans behind it. The couple begins to run. Sagusa glows green, and the 100 troops, commanded by Wilson, aims their M72 laws at the beast. The kaiju turns its body and runs towards the humans. The soldiers opens fire, but to no effect. The alien draws closer. Sagusa gets ready to defend everyone around her. Suddenly, an atomic breath blasts in front of Ghidorah, causing it to stop and hits the side of Mahara. The Titan looks to the right and becomes stunned. Godzilla II has arrived near the volcano. Now is his chance. Godzilla roars and runs to his enemy. Ghidorah is taken aback by his newfound determination. Suddenly, it realizes what his intentions are and what he is going to do. With both titans' minds very clear, they collide once more. Godzilla bites down on the middle head and grabs onto the left and right with both of his hands. The head bites on him and shocks him. He lets go, but quickly rushes to his right wing and bites on it. He turns his head and snaps its arm from the socket. Ghidorah howls in pain, but gets cut off when Godzilla grabs the heads again and aggressively pushes it. They draw nearer and nearer to the volcano's crater. Out of desperation, the head grabs Godzilla's right arm and snaps it from the bone. It reaches down, grabs his left leg, and tears his ACL. Godzilla shrieks in pain. Ghidorah lifts his head and fires gravity beams, pushing the kaiju away to the ground. He shivers in pain from the injured leg and arm. The opportunity was right there, and it was so close to being successful. But he falls short. Ghidorah furiously fires another wave of gravity beams, but it stops when it limps on his right arm. The bolt surges through Godzilla's body, but most of it goes into his dorsal fins, causing it to glow gold for a split second. Suddenly, he starts to realize it. Throughout the battle, he has been getting hit by Ghidorah's gravity beams. Most of the time, the bolts went straight into his fins, and in some instances, it gave him a small boost in power. Another idea comes into his mind. He forcefully pushes himself back on his good leg. Defiant, Godzilla roars at Ghidorah, telling it that it is not over. The three heads reaches a breaking point into a blind rage. Throughout the battle, his enemy refuses to go down. The humans continues to interfere. It has had enough. To the beast, it is time to end it. It stands on its hind legs and runs to its foe. Suddenly, it stops in its tracks. It looks down and sees that his legs are glowing green and glued to the ground. It looks to the left and sees the glowing Sagusa using her telekinesis to hold the beast down in one place. It roars, but it is cut off by 6 explosions to its right. The final 20-inch salvos has been fired by Amelia Teresawa and Robert Field. The rage within Ghidorah grows as it turns to the Dawn's remains and fires gravity beams at it. The forward bow explodes, leaving nothing behind but the Great Inferno. Then, it turns its attention back to the Esper. Teresawa and Mortimura are so distraught that their future daughter was killed that they call upon Sagusa and Wilson to run. But respectively, they stand their ground. The green aura surrounding Ghidorah's legs disappears. Sagusa collapses to her knees and breathes in heavily. The middle head lifts up and its underneck glows. It fires a single bolt. A blue laser suddenly cuts off the bolt before it touches the Esper and General. She looks up. She had thought she was going to die and accepted it. She turns to the left and her eyes widens. Ghidorah looks to the side as well and becomes shocked. Blue lightning bolts sparks in and outside of Godzilla's dorsal fins and parts of his body. Then, they cover his entire back. Blue lights covers up his eyes. He lets out a tremendous roar. 15 of his dorsal fins shoots lasers, maneuvers around, and makes the way to Ghidorah. The alien jumps in the air and flaps his wings, but winces in pain from its right arm. The lasers curves up and pierces through the wings. Ghidorah falls back down to solid ground. Godzilla fires more dorsal lasers as the winged titan tries to get back up. They pierce through his golden scaly skin with ease, then slices its arms, legs, and tails clean off. The kaiju that Ghidorah thought was at an end has now become more powerful. It pleads to the Kaiju King for mercy, of which Godzilla denies it. A laser shoots out from his left fins to the ground, acts as a crutch, and another shoots out from his right and becomes an unofficial arm. The time has finally come. Godzilla runs towards the injured Ghidorah at full speed. It fires gravity beams at him, only for all of the bolts to go into his dorsal fins, giving him more power. Realizing what it is doing, it stops. But it is too little, too late. Using his artificial arm and uninjured arm, he grabs the terrified Ghidorah and pushes the Great Titan back. It tries to stop him, but once again, it is too little, too late. The two kaiju comes to the crater of Mount Mahara. Godzilla stops and pushes Ghidorah. The three-headed alien roars, damning his enemy as it descends into the crater. The explosive charges goes off at Wilson's command. Ghidorah grips to the side of the crater, but it is losing its grip. Godzilla arches forward. His dorsal fins glows blue and gold, with electricity surging all over him. Blue and gold dorsal laser circles around him and forms a small shield. He fires an atomic breath at the shield, turning it into a golden spiral ray. The ray smashes onto Ghidorah, pushing it further into the mouth of Mahara. The kaiju splashes into the magma. Godzilla moves the ray all over the inside. The core of Mount Mahara reaches its boiling point, and then it erupts. The intense shockwave causes Godzilla to stop firing and knocks him 100 meters away from the crater. The kaiju falls on his side, the humans gets knocked down, and the shockwave hits the surviving destroyers and the carrier strike group. 30 seconds goes by. Godzilla opens his eyes and stares up at the rising ash cloud. He wonders if he has succeeded. He waits and waits. There is no sign of Ghidorah. He slowly gets back to his feet and continues to stare as Mahara continues to erupt. All of the humans near and far away stands back up as well. The impossible has been achieved. At the cost of suffering major injuries, Godzilla has done it. He does not growl nor victoriously roar into the sky. He only sighs with relief. He looks over at the destroyed Hope of the Dawn. Upon doing so, however, he sees that the flames, wreckage, and the entire ship itself disappear in front of his own eyes. He becomes confused. He looks over to the right where the humans are and spots one of them, General Douglas Wilson, the lone survivor of the Dawn, tearfully saluting him as his body begins to disappear. Thank you. Then he is gone. Godzilla becomes more confused. At first, he thinks it was all an illusion, but his injuries tells him that it was far from it. His eyes veers towards Tagusa, Munimura, and Terasawa, as well as the AMF soldiers behind them, to which they stare back at him. Since 1984, these two species have profound hatred towards one another. But 12 years later, all of the hatred is starting to fade away. He specifically looks at Tagusa. He remembers when and where the two had first met. But now, they had helped each other in this intense battle. Godzilla closes his eyes and nods his head, showing his thanks and respect. Tagusa and Terasawa becomes taken aback by this display. But they, as well as the soldiers behind them, accepts it. Then, with one good leg and dorsal laser helping him stand up, he looks away from the humans and begins walking away. Most of the soldiers holds their weapons to the side, and they, as well as those out at sea, salutes the Kaiju King as he limps away. Throughout Japan, there is no celebration or cheer from the people. In the AMF HQ in Shinjuku, the staff, including General Shindo, are standing up staring at the screen, not with a smile, but relief on everyone's faces. In the Prime Minister's office, Prime Minister Miyazawa hears that Operation War of the Titans was a success. But he knows that it costed a great amount of life. All around the world, the relief is overwhelming with the success of the operation. But in every world leader's minds, one thing will remain as a factor. As the world begins reconstruction and repopulation, what will happen next? As Tagusa, Munimura, and Terasawa watches Godzilla as he makes his way to the Pacific, they wonder the same thing. But whatever happens in this new alternate timeline, they and Godzilla II will be ready and must be very careful in terms of protecting this new future for years to come. One day later, the Anti-Megalosaurus Force conducted a thorough scan of the damages caused by Godzilla II and Ghidorah. It was devastating, especially by the latter. 197,892,544 civilians, including 5% of Tokyo's population and 86% of the AMF and JSDF personnel, are confirmed dead. And so ends the event that would come to be known as the 1992 War of the Titans, the deadliest event in human history since World War II. But it is only the beginning of a long, grueling tale that would come to be results of said event that changed the world's destinies forever.